All right, we are back at the Resource Center, and we are with your disability rep, Roy Rickstrew, of course. We've talked before. Good seeing you again.
Likewise, Tom.
All right, we're going to go through some things here. You've got medical records, the checkup, the things that you really need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and this is essentially what the records say if we read between the lines. Is kind of what this says. And so it's pretty easy to talk about what the medical documentation is on our claim, but there are other things that Social Security pulls from our files that give insight into your condition that aren't necessarily medical, but they're things we don't oftentimes think about.
Right, and it's also a thing where just because you may be thinking, everything's fine, I'm not doing something, that can work against you because they know what you're not doing as well.
That's true, that's true. And so one of the things that we look at is, what care we go and get, how diligent we are in pursuing with that care, but also what other things you're treated for.
Okay.
We have to keep in mind that when Social Security requests all of your medical records, they see everything that you go in for. And this is going to include things that are somewhat nuisance conditions, the cold, the flu, allergies, urinary tract infections. Not saying you shouldn't get care for those things.
True.
But those are things that you put a priority on to spend your money, to spend your time, to spend your effort to go and get treated. Wart removals, cyst removals, cosmetic issues. I recently had a claimant who was going in dependably and getting their Botox injections for cosmetic issues, but then weren't having their hands and their back looked at. And Social Security kind of looks at the way we prioritize our means to get care and what it is that we prioritize those on.
These don't necessarily fit into disabilities, in other words.
No, these things won't generate any kind of a disability approval necessarily, but they do give us insight. And if you're willing to go get care and spend limited resources on these type of things, the question is, how bad is your back or how bad is your knee?
Exactly.
If you're getting treated for allergies and that's taking precedent, if you will, over the knees and the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yep, same thing. How do you spend your money? And there's no requirement on the ways that we spend our money. Social Security won't tell you have to do something different. But again, we get insight out of the ways you spend your money. And of course, we talked about this before, but the drugs, the smoke, the drink, if you're not filling your medication, but you're buying your weed, Social Security looks at that and says, well, gosh, he's putting recreation above his course of care.
Right.
And it gives us some idea of how bad that condition truly is.
Trips and hobbies, tattoos, piercing, those are those other things. Your limited income, going to something, well, then this may not be as bad as you say it is.
Yeah, that's true. And even pets, and a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's kind of the reality. I've had clients before that went out and bought purebred dogs and spent money on it, talked to their counselor about how excited they were for their new puppy, but then in turn wasn't going and getting their anxiety medicine filled.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Yes.
Yeah, the last thing here is kind of our work history. And Social Security looks at our work history in the context of what we know how to do and what kind of experience we have, but also kind of in the inverse as well. They look at your past employment, your work record. How dependably did you work? Did you have a good work record or was it spotty and hit and miss?
Yeah, and also the reasons for leaving.
That's right, that's right. We see people that leave for kind of silly reasons a lot of times in the medical records.
True.
Not getting along if you have an anxiety issue is one thing, but some people just simply didn't gonna go.
True, and this last one here, first versus last resort.
That's right, and that's a big issue when it comes to the judges especially. They want to know that you're filing for disability because you've hit the end of the road, that you are out of options, not that it's a first resort. In their minds, they're looking at this as the last resort or a motivation issue. Are you really out of options or are you just not willing to go back into the workforce?
So all of these things, the things that you don't do, the things that you do, it's all coming to weigh on their decisions.
That's correct. That's
all right.
correct.
We've got the QR code, of course. You can speak to Roy, 417-812-6698. And this is important. Free consultations and often same-day appointments.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Give me the number. Give me a call at the ring me at the number there, rather. It's direct to my desk. And I have time most days to talk to new clients.
And you'll give them all the information of what they need to bring to the table.
Oh, most definitely.
It's pretty simple. The QR code, there he is, Roy Rickstrew.